Eminence, Patriarch Julian, and to the entire Archbishop's Council, to all senior bishops, abbesses, all members of the Spiritual Baptist Faith, to our former Minister of Government, Ms. Joan Yule Williams, to our former Senator and Secretary General of the PNM, Mr. Foster Cummings, to the media, good afternoon. I firstly want to, and permit me to do so, to express my profound gratitude to the organizing committee of this function for the kind invitation for me to share with you. I deem this an esteemed privilege. And so I will attempt to journey with you as we trace our heritage, as we trace our freedom, as we understand what this means to our faith. And so that I will do so and try to do so as quickly as I can. When I started preparing for this conversation, I reminded myself that some of the things that are important to me is where I am today, and that the way our God has been so grateful and the way He has been so merciful, that punctuated much of what I wanted to talk about today. And therefore Psalms 16 verse 6 reminded me that the lines have fallen unto me in pleasant places. Yea, I have a goodly heritage. We all have a goodly heritage, and indeed it is a cause for celebration. So as I attempt to go on this journey, I trust that together we will come to a place where we will better understand what this means. As we seek to empathize with our forefathers, as we seek to understand the difficulties that we face, at the end of this, it is my view we will be in a better place. You see, the whole issue of our heritage became so very complex to me, even though I have been looking at this for quite some time. And even as I speak to you as a spiritual Baptist practitioner, it is even more difficult, and I'll tell you why. Because as we pursue this journey, and as we look towards the healing that all of us seek, having regard to the challenges we face, it is indeed a difficult situation. So my own personal journey that I started looking at, and understanding that in all that I must do, I require God's guidance, because He indeed is the author of all our lives. We as spiritual Baptist practitioners even more so understand the challenges that we all go through in modern day time. And so from the Shelter Prohibition Ordinance to the repeal of the said ordinance, from our early development in Trinidad and Tobago, this Afrocentric religion, which can be found in other islands. Indeed, we find some of us in the US of A and in the UK and Canada. From our past in our country, we notice settlers who have been granted freedom. And one of the presenters or speakers spoke about the issue of the settlers in South Trinidad, which gave rise to the existence of the companies, for example, Fifth Company. But more importantly, these settlers brought with them the spiritual Baptist or the Baptist faith with them. And of these groups, our spiritual Shelter Baptist, an indigenous religion, which has as its base and the rhythm of Africa, some of the things that we continue to enjoy today, that was brought to them. So to the extent that the Holy Spirit is central to our lives and to our service, we continue to be guided by it. Our rituals, our beliefs, and our practices provide a framework for our worship. Our symbols, or sacred items, or center pole, or taria, or lota, remain in use in many of our churches as we seek to maintain these traditions. These are part of our heritage and allow us to understand, promote, and preserve these rich traditions. Brethren, the full range of inherited traditions, monuments, objects, culture are yet to be identified and explored. Indeed, as we sit here today, more and more traditions are being created. More particularly, the range of activities that we participate in, some of their meanings and behaviors which we draw from them are still unknown. Because this issue goes beyond excavating, preserving, restoring, and sometimes collecting some of the old things that we seek to hold on to. I am reminded that if we don't know what our heritage is, we as a faith are under threat. And so as we celebrate today, our freedom, we need to champion this cause so that we can sustain this knowledge. This very complex and nebulous concept of heritage is very difficult even for many of us to understand, because its meaning and its relevance vary from person to person. But some authors argue that heritage is what is preserved from and as part of, as a living collective memory of a people, not only to inform the pursuit about the past, but also to equip successive generations to fashion their future. And so heritage is what creates a sense of identity and assures our rootedness and our continuity. It may be physical artifacts, it may be buildings. This piece of land on which we will build a cathedral, this will form part of our heritage. It may be a custom, it may be books, it may be songs, it may be shared traditions. I note even as I continue to ponder on this topic, it is not the same as our history. Our heritage is broader and sometimes less analytical in approach. Because whereas for history, we speak about interpretation, survival of documentation, and written evidence, our heritage is about our identity. But if we were to apply that definition, the collective memory of the spiritual Baptist faith practitioners must be preserved such that it remains intact for generations to come. Our heritage is about our identity. But much of our heritage is oral. So we do a lot of activities, but it's not always written. And so as we seek to preserve this heritage, we've created a sense of identity, which assures the dynamism of our culture, an identity that makes us who we are and sets us apart from others, whether it be in terms of how we adorn ourselves, whether it be in terms of how we worship, whether it be in terms of how we give thanks. In a sense, these values, these principles, these ways of doing things are our heritage. Through our heritage and as a conscious choice, we as a faith have tried to create a better spiritual life for all practitioners. One which addresses our ecclesiastical and our spiritual structure within the faith. This was important and is important as we must ensure the governance of the faith is intact. We've tried to create a social structure as well as provide a safe haven for our membership so that we provide the support that is necessary and the sustenance. When we come together like this, and we celebrate, we are in fact noticing the pride of our people, because we do show up and we show off. Yeah. We express with appreciation that our efforts and our challenges, those have not daunted us. For us, our successes are important to our heritage. If you look around, you will agree that it is in fact so. Brethren, the recognition of our heritage is also brought to the fore in situations each year when we celebrate, and our patriarchs pointed to the fact that from here onwards, this ground, this land will be the place at which we will celebrate. We've celebrated the struggles of our forefathers. We speak of standing on the shoulders of those who went before. We have had many, many circumstances and situations that we continue to speak to. But after we do that at the celebration time of each year, we tend to wax cold. We speak of our elders as those large shady trees which continue to shade us on our spiritual journey. Indeed, we do so with pride. But what about our freedom? Some countries like ours, in our constitution, we speak of freedom. We speak of freedom of religion. We speak of freedom of beliefs and opinions, freedom of expression, freedom of association, freedom of movement and residence. But I would just want to concentrate on the freedom of religion because it remains relevant and central to us. For several decades, our heritage has been challenged. The enactment of this decree, that is the Shelter Prohibition Ordinance, was onerous to our faith. We face contempt by the existing colonial government structures. As a faith, through this ordinance, as stated above, there were restrictions to our freedom to practice. And Bishop Lewis pointed to persons having to worship in the bushes and so on. Now this is not the case. And so several stories we have been told. But with the repeal of this ordinance, this was a signal event in our journey as spiritual Baptist practitioners, since there was a removal of the prohibition to practice. And so we have celebrated and we still celebrate this freedom. But our resilience in the face of struggle for freedom and recognition is noteworthy. Today, notwithstanding this, our rituals, our beliefs and practices remain predominant. We as a faith are determined to continue our practice. We celebrate those who fought for freedom, those values and principles as our heritage. We remember things in our past that embody the best things of our past. We respect our living human treasures in the most part so they do not die without the recognition they deserve. Brethren, we must transform the heritage landscape of the faith. We must continue our research and come up with policies related to how we treat with our spiritual Baptist heritage. As we pursue the cultural development of our people, we must commit ourselves to the cultural development of our people, both in our faith, in our country at large. I ask of all of us, can we not have a repository of all the artifacts of the faith as we seek to preserve our heritage? But who is focusing on preserving our oral traditions? Remembering, of course, our heritage is being created as we speak. Finally, brethren, what is the extent to which our heritage and the attendant freedom was the extent to which that has contributed to improvement of us as a people, as a faith and as a country? What remains constant in my mind are the following. These questions continue. How would we maintain the customs, practices, and traditions of the faith into the future for generations? I want to proffer that we must continue to create public awareness and promote education such that we could become a much more forceful organization. Our heritage is constantly being created. Would our practices survive into the world or in a world of changing technology, where we have new and emerging hard and soft technologies, as we continue maintaining this existing heritage of ours? When there's religious intolerance, would we remain steadfast and unmovable? In a world where there are several religious beliefs, we must remain anchored in the belief that there's one God in whom we trust. Would the promise of freedom hold? As a faith, a part of the secular identification of our freedom is our constitution. We know that the whole issue of being in Christ, you are free indeed, but we must recognize there's a secular part of this. What about our freedom to exercise our religious beliefs, or assembly, or speech? As a faith, we have faced restrictions, but now we enjoy the freedom to worship. This freedom must be guaranteed. Brethren, as I close, according to Martin Luther, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in the moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. When and wherever we are challenged, we stood strong and resilient. Let us as a faith remain resilient, recognizing God's promise to us all. I thank you.
I thank you. I was Dr. Agatha Carrington. For your moving words.